In this video, we'll be looking into how we can create a tenancy invoice and creating receipts, reading a tenant ledger, creating credits, and lastly, refunding overpaid rent. If the tenant needs to pay for another item other than rent, we can raise a tenancy invoice. For example, this may be used for water usage or carpet cleaning. The tenancy invoice reimburses the ownership balance and does not pay the creditor. To create a tenancy invoice, go into Management, then locate where it says Tenancy and select Create Tenancy Invoice. You'll just need to search for the tenant that this invoice belongs to. Select that tenant, and from within Invoice Details, you can fill in the description of this tenant's invoice. Select the date when the invoice is due, and choose the account for which the invoice belongs to. In this example, it belongs to the carpet/flooring account. If you don't see the account that you're looking for, what you can do is go into Configuration and set up an account under Accounts. Lastly, you can type through the amount which is displayed on the bill. Then you can upload the bill or optionally pass on to the next stage. Once you're happy with the setup of this invoice, what you can do is create and send the invoice. If your tenant has registered that they would like to receive their invoices and receipts via email, you can also choose whether they don't want to receive it or leave that so that they can receive it, and then after we can create and send the invoice. Once you create your invoice, you can see that displayed under Recent Invoices. In this example, it's number 717. If I want to print off that invoice and give that to the tenant, I can click on Print Invoice, which appears into a new screen, and it will display the tenant invoice for me to look at. If you would like to view all the tenancy invoices within your Property Tree account, you'll need to go into Management, and from Tenancy, there's a section called Find Tenancy Invoice, which shows a list of all invoices in Property Tree. Let's say the tenant has sent us money to pay for rent as well for the invoice that we have just raised. If we want to create a receipt in Property Tree, you can do that through Management and click on Create Receipt. When we create a receipt in Property Tree, you can select the receipt type, whether that is from the tenancy, ownership, or even unknown funds, and select which one is appropriate. Then we can search for the correct profile. And we can create the details of this receipt. From the bank statement, you'll need to put through which date you received the money on. In this case, I received it on the 29th of August. And I received the amount of $1,200. We can select which contact put through the payment, how that was received via either direct deposit, check, or cash, and if there's any reference towards that payment, you can type that through here. With that $1,200 that we have receipted, we can allocate those funds towards different areas within here. Here is the invoice that we created earlier for carpet cleaning, and you'll also see any rent that is outstanding and will display with arrears. I'm going to allocate $200 towards the invoice by using the plus button, and I'm going to allocate $650 towards rent by typing in that number. From what I can see, there is $350 available left from the $1,200. If I don't want to allocate that towards rent, I can hold that back for tenancy, which is basically an internal account used for up and coming invoices to pay. So what we could do here is press the plus button to allocate $350 towards hold for tenancy, and you can type through a description. In this case, I'm going to say held for future invoices. You can put through a date if you want to, and once you're ready, you can create the receipt, and this tenant will automatically receive an email about the receipt that has just been created. So let's create that receipt now. From that example, you'll note that we have allocated the whole $1,200 to 3 different areas within Property Tree. If you want to reprint that receipt, you can click on the printer icon. That will open up a new tab, which displays the receipt for you to either print or email. To find a list of all receipts that have been entered through Property Tree, you'll need to go into Management, and from here we can click on Find Transactions. You'll just need to select the trust account if you have more than one, and you'll see a list of transactions down within this list. You can filter your search results by selecting what type of receipt you're looking for example, just tenancy receipts or payments to ownerships. You can view specifically those transactions, and you can type in who made that payment or who received that payment. The receipt that we have just entered through was number 962. You'll note that there are 3 different types of 962. That's because there are 3 different allocations, and you'll see on the right hand side the details. It went to 3 different areas within Property Tree. So all these amounts add up to $1,200. I can sort how the data displays by clicking on either one of these columns. And I can also click on the 3 dots to export this list into a file. Let's go into 962, the receipt that we have just created, for further details. You can view the full details of this receipt from the Receipt Details section, and also see all communications that have been sent out. If you want to email this receipt again or reprint it, you can click any of those options. If you decide to cancel a receipt, for example, you may have entered that through twice in the system, you'll just need to provide a reason why that you are cancelling the receipt. And when you go back to find those transactions, you'll note that cancelled receipts will display in brackets, and when you view that receipt once more, the entered date section will display that it's been cancelled and the reason why it has been cancelled. Let's have a look at a tenancy ledger. In this example, I'm going to search for Liesl Jones, and we're going to view her ledger and see how those transactions look within that ledger. Remember how we allocated funds to held for tenancy? Well, that $350 is now sitting in held for tenancy, which is under Liesl Jones. To look at the tenancy ledger for Liesl Jones, go to Actions and click on Print Ledger. Then what you can do is view the report, which will open up into a new screen, and it displays the tenancy ledger for Liesl Jones. Let's zoom in a bit so that we can see what's in this report. Within the tenancy ledger, we have pre-selected transactions from the 1st of August to the 31st of August. You'll see when you received that transaction, when that was entered by which user within your Property Tree account, and what number that is allocated to. You can see for every rental payment what that related to in terms of periodic rent, and it will also show if they made a part payment towards their next rental amount, it will display as a part payment, and when they're effectively paid up until, and who paid it within that receipt. Your debits will display any money going out of this account and all credits going into this account. For this example, most of those were made up of rental payments. Then the balance will display all the credits added up from this account. The held funds for tenancy account has its own separate row within the tenancy ledger. What you'll see here too is the amount displayed is $350, which we receipted earlier, and you'll also see the description that we also provided will display on the tenancy ledger. So both different sections have different balances, as you can see. You might come across a situation where the tenant has paid for something at the property. For example, this could be an emergency plumber call out for something that went wrong over the weekend by chance. So what you could do is either have that same amount sent back to them, or you can choose to create a tenancy credit to their rental amount, or for existing invoices. I'm going to search for a tenant and create a tenancy credit. To create a credit, go to Actions towards the right and click on Create Credit. You can choose to create a credit for either rent or for existing invoices. When you select existing invoices, you'll need to find the one that you're going to create this credit for. But for this case, I'm going to allocate this towards rent and type in a description. When you type in a reason, that will display on the tenancy ledger. Next, we'll put through the amount that we're going to allocate towards rent. And what we can do is create that credit towards this tenancy. And you can also see all previous credits that have been allocated towards different accounts. We have essentially pushed the effective pay to date for that tenancy called Tony Collette. Now, if the tenant does not want a rent credit and prefers to receive the funds directly, what you'll need to do is set the tenant up as a creditor, then create an invoice for that exact amount and pay for the same amount as well. In some cases, tenants vacate and they have overpaid their rent. Overpaid rental amounts should be sent back to the tenant. Or, if there are any outstanding invoices, we can use that money to pay for those invoices. One of my tenants has left the property. From what I can see, within his held for tenancy, there is still $800. Although, when I look into his lease and rent information, it looks like he's paid up to the correct date. So essentially, he has overpaid in rent. There's an invoice in my office that I need to enter through into Property Tree, but it relates to Frankie. So what I can do is go to Actions and click on Create Invoice. Once you have filled in your invoice details, you'll see here that you have the option to allocate held funds from the balance of $800 and use $200 of those dollars towards this invoice. So you can pay for this invoice on the spot. And we can simply create that invoice down here. We've basically allocated held funds towards an invoice. If we look back onto Frankie's profile, you'll now see that $600 is left within held for tenancy. Let's say that that money is to go directly back to the tenant. We can go into Actions and we can create a refund to the tenant for the overpaid rent. I'm going to choose my refund type and select Held Tenancy Funds and choose an amount to refund to the tenant. In this case, I'm going to select to distribute all that $600 which is remaining in that account. And I'm going to fill in the account details for this tenant. And once again, you'll need to provide a reason why, in this case, you're refunding all the money to the tenant. Once you've completed the details, you can click on Create Refund. This now displays a payment batch which is sent to the tenant in this example. If you have your ABA files set up within your configuration, you can create the ABA file and upload that to your internet banking. What you can see now within Frankie's profile is that there is no money held for tenancy. And that's a basic scenario how you can handle overpaid rent and if there are invoices due as well. Here are all the topics that were discussed in today's session. Thank you all for watching and have a fantastic day.